Welcome back to ACC Today. Aaron Taylor is my partner, Jac Collinsworth, and we're going to welcome in one of the absolute best of 24/7 sports. Also works for CBS Sports as well, the great Tom Lloyd. Tom, thank you for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jack. Hope all's well, buddy.
Absolutely. So what's all this stuff, dude? With Wimbush, I'm reading all this about him, and he's got a fix-it guy, and got this guy coming out to work on him, and psychologically, his throwing motion, is whatever the case may be. What's going on with Wimbush this offseason?
You know, from everything I'm hearing, we are going to see a completely different Brandon Wimbush this fall, and I think all Fighting Irish fans are pretty excited about that. I mean, this was a guy that, you know, he definitely showed flashes last year, but it was the consistency that was a problem. I mean, he runs just about as good or better than any quarterback in the country, but he was struggling to hit a receiver 5 yards away from him, 10 yards away from him, and that was a huge problem. I know that there was talk that Taylor Kelly was working with him this offseason, but he went home and he was working with Mehdi Williams, his high school quarterback coach. But I think this is more of a mental thing for him, and I think that the game is starting to slow down for him. And this happened. I mean, he hasn't played a ton of football in his life, and he grew a ton from his junior to senior season, and then sophomore to junior season while he was in high school at St. Peter's Prep. So the growth it's not the growth difficulties at the college level. They've been an issue for him, and I think that everything is starting to click. And I honestly think that people need to kind of calm down and let this play out, because I don't think there's going to be anybody calling for his head or even calling for Ian Book or Phil Dracovic, this time next season. I think we're going to be seeing a completely different Brandon Wimbush.
It's interesting because I think a lot of the speculation last year and what it looked like from my standpoint was he had the yips, and he was in his head and didn't have confidence to pull the trigger, and had a run game that was humming for him early on in the season, playing behind the nation's best offensive line, and Josh Adams, running for a gazillion yards. And under the bright lights against Miami, that's when it started to unravel for me, where it just seemed like the game moved too fast, and Miami played extremely well that night, particularly up front. And it got to be a bit much for him. And I'm interested to see, to your point, that maturation. I like the kid. Every time I've had an opportunity to sit down with him, to chat with him, talk with Mike Sanford when he was a true freshman many years ago. Mike Sanford was the offensive coordinator / quarterbacks coach who's now at Western Kentucky. He said, man, he might be better than both Malik Zaire and Deshaun Kaiser. He's the best of all three, and his upside was tremendous, and everybody was raving about him. But in the end, when it came time to be able to execute and pull the trigger, that's really where he struggled. What can you tell us, if there is some questions and the production isn't there, what the backup quarterback position looks like?
Yeah, and I definitely agree, while I have you, on the yips comment. I mean, the guy was squeezing the ball too tight, and it was so weird to see a guy that completed over 70% of his passes as a high school senior struggling, just throwing a tight spiral, connecting on guys downfield. But behind him, you have Ian Book, and he showed flashes last year. But again, under the bright lights, I mean, there were some struggles against Miami as well when he came into the game. But after that, I mean, I know Avery Davis is there, but he's more of a guy that's going to be an athlete that's probably an even better runner than Wimbush is at this point. And he was so fun to watch as a high school quarterback because he was just dominant. And but then everybody behind him absolutely loves Phil Dracovic, who was a high school All-American, and he's the next big thing that everybody's calling for. I've seen him multiple times in high school, and yeah, you see it. This is a guy that's 6'4", 220-plus pounds, maybe even 6'5". I mean, and he runs extremely well. So this isn't a guy that's just your typical pocket passer, a big guy. He can really, really run. But again, there's a learning curve, as you guys know, and it's going to take time for even Phil to get acclimated with the college game. This is another guy who completed a high percentage of his throws in high school, and but mentally, this kid is as impressive as they come. The future is extremely bright for Phil Dracovic, and I think he's a guy that Notre Dame fans are going to be very excited for in the future. But again, taking it back just a little bit, I don't see any issues where I feel like Brandon's not going to take that leap forward. So I think that the yips are going to be at least lessened this season. And I really do believe that we are going to see a completely different quarterback this year.
Just out of curiosity, and I may just, coming out of the bowl game, I was almost, I don't want to say convinced, but I was positive that there was at least going to be a competition coming into spring football after Ian Book wins him a bowl game and looked really good in the game. You know as well as I do, he was kind of Brian Kelly's recruit, and as a result of that, you're always going to kind of get the nod. You're going to get opportunities, knowing that Kelly stuck your neck out for you the way he did. How did this so quickly become clearly Wimbush's job? What happened in that gap between bowl game and spring football that I missed?
So I was kind of curious about that as well, because there was definitely, a controversy, and there was, wow, Ian Book's the top and Brandon Wimbush is now faltering, and there's going to be a huge battle this spring and then into the fall and summer months. What's going to happen? And then all of a sudden this spring, from what I was talking to some sources, everything we saw in the spring game in terms of the accuracy, getting the ball out of his hand quickly, making right throws, showing good timing, that occurred all spring long. And that, when I heard that kind of blew my mind a little bit, because I expected there to be, it's going to have to go into the fall, and he's going to have to get the bullets flying around him. But from everything I was told, through the sources that I spoke with, that this was happening all spring long, and he just separated himself. And it wasn't that Ian was playing poorly. Ian's a very good quarterback, and I absolutely loved him out of high school. I thought Notre Dame got a steal in flipping him from Washington State. But no, Brandon just lit it up all spring long, and everybody raved about him, and we just kind of saw everything come to fruition during the spring game.
Well, a lot of the focus has been on the quarterback position, and for good reason. It's the most visible position in the most popular sport. But we all know that the big uglies get it done up front, particularly Notre Dame, winner of the Joe Moore Award last year, going to the nation's most outstanding offensive line unit. Their coach last year, Harry Hiestand, moves on to the Chicago Bears. There was an offensive analyst who has a lot of history with Brian Kelly named Jeff Quinn, who does a remarkable job at that position as well. But he's got some big shoes to fill. In your opinion, based on who you've talked to and what you've seen, what could you foresee out of the offensive line up front for the Irish in 2018?
Well, I hate to say that there wouldn't be a drop-off, because you're replacing two all-time greats for Notre Dame in Mike McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson. But I'm thinking from left to right, we're going to have Liam Eichenberg, Alex Bars, Sam Mustipher, Tommy Kramer, and Robert Hainsey. And these are the guys. These are some guys that, other than Eichenberg, these are guys with experience, guys that have played a lot of football. I mean, Kramer and Hainsey split time last year and played a ton of. So I think that this is a group that I think Notre Dame fans should be very, very thrilled with, because there's a lot of potential here. There's talk of down the road first round picks again with some of these guys. I mean, the guy I'm really watching to take a big leap forward this year is Liam Eichenberg. I think he's your left tackle, a guy that can kind of step in and do things that and kind of go on the same path that Mike McGlinchey had. I love Alex Bars and Tommy Kramer. I don't see another Quentin Nelson out of those guys, but we're talking about one of the greatest of all time in terms of college football play. So I don't think that it would take a lot. I'm not sure I could find anybody that would really truly fill his shoes right away. So and just top to bottom, this whole offensive line group, I think Jeff Quinn has to be fired up about what he's got, and I think this is going to be another strength. I was asked a couple weeks ago for a story with 24/7 Sports on just the biggest strength for Notre Dame. And even though Mike McGlinchey and Quentin Nelson are gone, I think you quickly look to the offensive line just because of the overall talent this group has, top to bottom.
If this team is going to be what I guess they're aspiring to be, if they're going to be a 10+ win kind of a team, they got to figure out something defensively, because Mike Elko was such a great spark for that group, and I thought he really simplified everything after BVG. Now that he hits the road, what do you expect to change under Clark Lee, or are we going to hopefully see the same kind of a mold here?
I expect a lot of the same things. I mean, these guys, Clark and Mike, go way back, and I expect a lot of the same things. Maybe some minor tweaks here and there. I know Mike Elston will chime in with some personnel thoughts, but this is going to be Clark's show, and I think that he is more than capable of running it. And he's got to love what he's got coming back. Getting Jerry Tillery back along the defensive line, Tavon Coney at linebacker, as you know, was big for this defense. Now they just need to get some production out of Alohi Gilman, the transfer in at safety. And, this is a guy that when I was talking to my sources last year, he was going to step in as by far the best defensive back and safety that they had on the roster. So it was disappointing for them that he didn't play last year. But you see Julian Love coming in and just kind of coming into his own the last couple of years. Troy Pride Jr. at cornerback is the guy that I am told is taking that next step and is the one to watch this year in defensive back for Notre Dame. And this guy at cornerback, he has blazing speed, 4.3 speed. Nick Watkins not being on this roster and transferring. Troy was a big reason for that. So look for those guys, just this whole defense to take things up a notch. Last year there was some bumps, no doubt, but I expect no drop off, and I actually think they're gonna have improved play on the defensive side of the ball under Lee.
Wow.
Their defensive back coach, Todd Light, is a former teammate of mine. He was a senior captain when I came in as a freshman and had a remarkable pro career. And I think is one of the many former players that Brian Kelly's done a nice job bringing back. Players that understand, or that are now coaches that understand the unique challenges that Notre Dame presents. I was back there in the spring, and I want to ask you about a defensive back who I think has an opportunity to make some noise there, and that's Houston Griffith, Howard Griffith's son. He really showed up to me both on tape and at the practice that I saw as playing above his grade level, if you will, as an early entry true freshman.
Houston is a guy that we at 24/7 Sports had on the 24/7 Sports composite rankings as a top 100 prospect. What I like about Houston is he's got the size at 6'1", 192 pounds, but he's got the ability to play both cornerback and safety. I think he starts out at corner, potentially moves to safety down the road. But I know Notre Dame is very excited about what this guy brings to the table. And like you said, he had a terrific spring. And despite even though he was ranked so highly, I think he produced and played at a level above what was expected of a true freshman to come in as an early enrollee. So, yeah, I released a story today at irishillustrated.com about five true freshmen that are locks to play right away. And Griffith was my number one guy because all the guys are very excited about him. He's very smart, comes from a great background. Dad was a great football player and great mind, and that's exactly what Houston is. So I think you're right. He's a guy that has a chance to be a difference maker down the road, but he'll definitely play a lot as a freshman.
How do you view week one against Michigan right now? Do you like Notre Dame's chances? I
liked Notre Dame's chances more when Shea Patterson wasn't playing, but no question. Dude, top to bottom, like I said, unless I'm completely wrong on Brandon Wimbush, I think he's going to be the key here. I expect an improved defense. I expect a better quarterback play from Brandon. I think Notre Dame wins that game. I just don't think that this Michigan team is good enough to really hang with them for 4 quarters and come into Notre Dame Stadium and beat them.
That's the big point right there. The big point is at Notre Dame. If that's at the Big House, nothing against BK. He has not proven that he can win the big game on the road, and he has proven to some degree that he can win the big game at home. So you got to believe that plays into this thing big time. He is Tom Loy of 24/7 Sports CBS as well. Tom, as always, great stuff. Really appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.